Welcome to Halftime. I'm your host, Doug Piper, and I so appreciate your allowing me to join you as we explore our halftime journeys together. We're going to go live at the top of the hour, but thank everyone for joining us a little bit early. Today, we're talking with Billy Prim. Billy is an amazing person. He's the founder, executive chairman of Primo Water, amongst many other businesses. So please join me in welcoming Billy to our program. Billy, I'm going to bring you up on screen here momentarily. There we go. Okay. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Doug. How you doing?
I am doing awesome, especially having a chance to talk to you yet again.
Oh, I appreciate it. Enjoy being here.
Well, it's been a lot of fun, and I think we just finished what was my favorite holiday, Thanksgiving. It has everything to do with friends and family and good food. And I think it's even better than Christmas. How was your Thanksgiving?
Oh, thanks for asking. And I got to agree. It is a favorite holiday. We've been so blessed and have so many blessings to be thankful for. And ours was really special. I mean, we had 27 people family members to our house for Thanksgiving. From my side of the family, my wife's side of the family, a lot of nieces and nephews, and it was just so good to have everybody and so much fun. So, how about yours? How about yourself? Where'd you spend it?
We had maybe the largest gathering ever. We had over 30.
Wow.
And I know I ate too much, but man, I just love sweet potato souffle. Do you ever have that?
I've learned to eat a lot of sweet potatoes of late.
Well, you're from the South like I am, so I don't know that our other listeners will quite appreciate that. But if you haven't had it, we down here we count it as a vegetable, but it probably really qualifies as a dessert.
Yeah. Since my doctor got me off the white potatoes, I've learned to really like sweet potatoes.
Well, I just love Thanksgiving, and it's such a special time. And as halftimers, I think it's an especially great opportunity for allowing us to really share deeply. And Lloyd even had a webinar on that a few weeks ago, which for me, I really enjoyed. Did you do anything kind of unique? This maybe not a Norman Rockwell Thanksgiving?
Nothing really unique about our family, but we've got a group. One of the things I always did as a kid, we always went hunting on Thanksgiving, and so the traditions continues to carry on, and a lot of the family members still like to go skeet shooting or do something outdoors every year, and so we did that in the afternoon.
Well, I love that. Our tradition has been our Christmas picture. So we all get together and go take a family Christmas. And so it was really special this year. My daughter is building her first house, and she was actually prodigal at one point. So we're quite thrilled to see her building a little house for herself.
Oh, that's nice. Special time.
It really was. Well, we're going to have some fun today talking about your halftime story. And for those that are maybe just joining in, and we haven't gone live quite yet, Billy, but can you want to share a minute or so about your halftime journey, and then we'll go quiet and start the actual live program.
Yeah. Well, everybody's halftime journey, I assume, is different, and certainly the most of the halftimers I worked with, everybody was in a unique situation, and my particular situation was that I've been an entrepreneur since the day I was 19, and to get out of that business world of creating businesses, and it's exhilarating. But it is difficult to ever stop and really slow down long enough to figure out what does God really want me to do in this next chapter. So it was unique. I'll put it that way.
So it helped you?
It did. Without halftime, I'm sure I would not be where I am today in the frame of mind and really in putting together what my purpose is and how I can measure that.
In frame of mind, you mean kind of like handling those bumps in the road?
We all have them. Absolutely.
Yours are just on a scale a little bigger than the rest of us.
They're all meaningful to everyone. There's no difference, no matter how many zeros is beside it.
Well, I appreciate you being here, and I know you've actually been extra busy these past few weeks. So I appreciate you taking time to share your story with us today.
Glad to do it. Okay, so glad to do it.
Well, we're going to go live. For those of you that are in the audience, these early minutes are just a chance to kind of peek behind the curtain. But at the top of the hour, which is about 10 seconds away, we're going to go live. So for those of you that are tired of hearing from me, I'm going to go quiet. And we're going to go live at the top of the hour. Welcome, friends, to Halftime. I'm your host, Doug Piper, and I'm Halftime Carolina's Alumni Director. But more importantly, I hope you'll join me in this webinar series as we explore our halftime journeys together. Each of these webinars is designed to help you on your halftime journey through the actual stories of other alumni sharing their experiences. Today, we're joined by Billy Prim. He's the founder of Blue Rhino, the founder, executive chairman of Primo Water Corporation, and they're a provider of multi-gallon purified self-service filtered drinking water sold throughout the U.S. and Canada. In his spare time, he also owns the Winston-Salem Dash, a minor league baseball team, and in addition, he's the chairman of the Dean Prim Foundation, which provides 4-year university scholarships. Wow, Billy, that is something. Welcome to our program. And I understand you're away from the office this week.
I am. Thank you for allowing me to be with you via the internet.
Well, good. So the weather good where you are?
I am. I'm in Florida, and the weather is fantastic this week.
Well, Billy, for our audience sake, I've heard a lot of your story as we've talked preparing for today, but would you mind just giving just a brief intro in your story and what we're going to learn today?
And what I would hope that I can articulate to folks is that I was able to get off what I call the serial entrepreneur treadmill. And those of you that start businesses would understand that. And through that, I was able to find my purpose for the next chapter. And I think that's something that a lot of people can relate to, hopefully.
Well, we're going to move into the main part of our program in just a moment, but I appreciate, Billy, your sharing that with us. I really look forward to hearing more about that. But right now, there are a few items I'd like to go through real quickly before we jump into Billy's story. First of all, our next webinar will be with Lloyd Reed, where he discusses New Year's resolutions that actually work. And for those of you that are familiar with Halftime, we're going to be talking about your roadmap. That will be Thursday, December 5th at 9:30 a.m. And I think Alyssa's going to pop that in the chat there. So if you have a moment, click on that, and I would encourage you to sign up. We have a Halftime Facebook online group. I'd encourage you to join that. Just do a search for Halftime Institute, and I think that will pop up in the group section. We have a Ask a Question button. Now, that's pretty much in the bottom of your screen. And if I can kind of get centered up here, maybe right about there, if I've pointed correctly, is where you can jump in and click on that. And Billy will answer those questions in the last part of the webinar. And the neatest thing about it is if you've got to run, but you want to ask a question right quick, we will still answer your questions whether you're here live or not. We have the chat screen, which I think is over here. And I hope you will join us there with the chat and just kind of let us know how things, where you're from and other things. Now, if we do have technical issues, we will restart the webinar and look for an email. If your webinar is not playing correctly, I hope you'll refresh your browser window, as that will correct most issues. And lastly, if things just aren't going perfectly, look for an email. Now let's move into our conversation with Billy Prim. Billy transitioned into halftime when he sold his Blue Rhino propane exchange business. And since that time, he's founded a new company, Primo Water, and continues to use his entrepreneurial skills to help his family, his business associates, and his community too. So Billy, welcome to Halftime. We're really glad to have you today. I hope you're doing well.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm glad to be here, share my story.
Billy, is it really true your company, when you sold Blue Rhino, had more locations than McDonald's, Burger King, and Wendy's all combined?
That is what I'm told. We used to say that if your town or city had fast food, you had Blue Rhino, and we were pretty much ubiquitous in North America.
Well, I've certainly got it, and I imagine most of our audience has, and it's really cool to talk to the founder of such a prolific name. Can you jump into, though? I mean, you've created, I think, one business before Blue Rhino. You created Blue Rhino, and you've got just all these amazing business stories. But why wasn't that enough to just retire and play golf the rest of your life?
Well, when I sold Blue Rhino, I was 48 years old. And that's the first time I read Bob Buford's book, Halftime. I read it and I took time to really pray about what did God really want me to do at that point in life. And as I looked around, I realized that God had given me certain skills to create businesses, motivate people around a mission, and that He really didn't put me here to lie on the beach the rest of my life. And I felt like He wanted me to go use those skills. And that's when we started Primo Water, which is a similar distribution concept, except with 5-gallon bottled water, something that I feel like is very important for the quality of life for people. And so very proud of what we built at Primo Water and what we're doing. Not only here in the U.S., but around the world at this point.
Well, Billy, transitioning from such a success story, you called it serial entrepreneur, but isn't it a little bit like the wheels, the hamsters get on and don't seem to know how to get off? I know you had some circumstances that kind of forced you to wrestle with having to sell Blue Rhino that made sense to you for everybody's best interest. But, selling your baby like that, I mean, you grew it from nothing to such a huge business. Most people would be really challenged by a decision like that. How did you... what was the things you learned from Halftime that helped you deal with all that?
Yeah. Well, I'm fortunate that my family instilled some values and religious values in me at an early age that I've always had God at the foundation of most decisions I made. In the case of selling Blue Rhino, we were a public company, and when shareholders speak and shareholders get an opportunity to make a large gain and a large reward, it was the best thing for everybody, and it was the right thing to do. However, I didn't feel like God was ready for me to stop using my skills. And that's the reason that I created Primo Water and several other companies. But as far as what halftime has done for me, if you fast forward, after creating Primo Water and building it to 45,000 plus locations around the U.S. and Canada, I realized that my next chapter was approaching, and that's when I really dove deep into halftime and went through a year-long program. Lloyd Reeb was my coach. I had 6 or 8 other folks from the Carolinas that we went through a year-long program to really help each other understand our strengths, our weaknesses, where we are in life, and just to put together a mission statement for that next chapter of life that didn't involve measuring dollars and cents in the half a dozen different companies that I'm involved in. And I could have never done that without this group's help and without a structured process that we went through.
Billy, was there an aspect of that process that sort of helped you focus maybe on your direction, what was maybe most important?
Tell you something that's really simple, but I had never done. I had never taken a full day in what you would call a silent retreat. I had never been away from the phones and email and all the daily things that are going on for a full day, to sit back and pray and listen to what God is trying to tell me. I just never had slowed down that long. It didn't matter if I was in Australia or China or South Africa. I felt like I had to be connected. And when you do that, you really don't take the opportunity to listen to what God's telling you. You're trying to create your own path instead of listening to where God wants you to go. And the silent retreats that I took really had more impact on my next chapter than anything else.
So, Billy, the silent retreat, that was part of your process in the year-long program.
Mm-hmm.
How did you feel about doing that? Was that intimidating?
Oh, it's very intimidating. I mean, as most people that are out there running companies about stepping away for an entire day without any connection to any device at all, other than your Bible, and it's just you and the Lord trying to talk and listen. And in my case, I did it. I got a favorite spot on the beach in Kiawah Island in South Carolina that is just a perfect location of privacy, and it was really inspiring to me.
Were there any steps that you learned during the process where, again, just being disconnected, being alone, with any aspects of that were, I guess, that were helpful? You remember some of the steps or what you had to kind of overcome to be quiet that long?
Well, it's intimidating, and overcoming it is just leaving everything behind. Is the big issue. But I think that the first time you do it, it takes about a half a day to really get comfortable in where you are and what you're doing. But after a couple of hours, you do settle in and start to really think about the true meaning of life, and that was so helpful to me. I mean, to me, as I mentioned, with numerous businesses, it was just so hard to find a new purpose other than creating businesses and trying to make another dollar or whatever that might be called in this world.
So Billy, for those that are not real familiar with the halftime process, you didn't start out with the silent retreat the first day, right? That's how did you, do you remember kind of where that was in your year-long program?
No, that was definitely in the middle of our program once we were 6 months into it. A couple of things that were interesting about the halftime program that I wouldn't have done if I'd have designed it myself, but I think were very important, is first, we brought my wife into it. We brought all the spouses into this whole program of, we're getting ready for our next chapter. And we're trying to ask God where we should go in this next chapter and what we should do. But you're an important part of that too, my wife, Debbie. And so can you join me in this venture? And she was instrumental in where we ended up.
I know the spouses are critical. We did the same thing in the program that I went through. And actually, my wife joined in a lot of the coaching calls that we went through. And I found that was instrumental. How did your wife react? Or I've even heard the word thrown around, de-weird, what the year-long training that we went through. How did she react to that?
I think my wife was probably there before me, because I'm the one that what happens is, if you're successful in a couple of ventures, you've got another opportunity every day, it seems like. And my wife was ready to slow down and discover the true meaning of life way before I was. And so she was very supportive in this journey. And I think she really is happy and helped with the transformation, I'll call it, of my thinking and how I approach life.
So Billy, you went through the silent retreat part of this. You're well into your class. Was there how did you kind of get your focus on really what you wanted to pour the rest of your life in? You're obviously really good at starting businesses, but you realized there was more to life than that. So was there an aspect that there was kind of an aha moment? Can you lead up to that?
Absolutely. I think that the big thing that really helped me is there were components of this that were very similar to the way I approach business. When you approach a business, you really want to start out with a mission statement or a purpose. What am I trying to do? And that's exactly the way we started this process of what's the next chapter going to be about, and what is that purpose? And that's where the group really helps each other, because we all have different strengths and weaknesses, and we discuss those in trying to articulate what that true purpose really is. And And that's where it gives me that North Star of where I'm going in the future in this next chapter. My mission statement was to use my entrepreneurial skills and experiences to inspire my family, my business associates, and my community to live a better life. And breaking it down and thinking about how I do that in this next chapter, in those three buckets of and those three audiences, really helped me get centered into some ideas about how I could be successful at that in this next chapter.
Billy, I think that's fascinating because you would almost think with your background, it might be supplying propane to the world or water to people in Africa. So how did you, can you describe a little bit that, maybe you thought of that and said no, and you thought of the water and said no. How did you decide it was those three groups, your businesses and your family and your community? Can you walk through that a little bit?
Yeah, I can, and I would say it may turn out to be that I'm working with people to supply water in Africa. That God just hasn't laid that on me yet. He hasn't shown me that. But as I started to think about my situation, the things that I knew I was really passionate about, that was the three things it was. My family, I mean, we do a family meeting every year. Been doing this for over 10 years. We have a family value system. We have family mission statement. We have films of the values that my grandfather and parents instilled in me, and we're trying to move those same values down to my grandchildren and the generations to come. So that group that you see there, that is something I can get really passionate about and put my energy into. The second group is all the business associates that I have. I mean, not only do I have Primo Water, I have multiple other businesses and touch thousands of employees. And I realized I could have a huge impact on them just by sharing my story about how putting God at the center of my life and building on His foundation has worked for me, and inviting them to try it. And that can impact, thousands of people who then can have that same impact on their family just by sharing what I do with my family. And then the third thing is is my community, the Winston-Salem community. It's been so good to me. It's been a great home for my family and my businesses. And it's time that I really work to do something for that community, and that's got to be an important part of this next chapter.
Billy, can you share a story or an example with either your business associates or your family or your community that is kind of part of this next phase of Billy Prim's life?
Sure, I would. A couple of easy ones that I would throw out there that are simple to get people thinking. There's a group called Love Out Loud in Winston-Salem that a guy named Chuck Spahn has put together. And Love Out Loud is about bringing all the communities of Winston-Salem, from the lower income to the we're so polarized in so many cities today. How do we bring everybody of all groups together? And we do that by discussing what we have in common about building God's kingdom together. And so it's a group that fits right into where I want to see our city go, to bring people together in Christ's name. A perfect example. Another example is the fact you don't have to. One of the things that was hard for me is I've always been the founder of a lot of these businesses. It was my idea, and I shaped all of the strategy and everything. Well, I realized there's a lot of other people that are doing great things out there that just need my help, whether financially or giving them some ideas or introducing them to a network of people and so on. And I've got a good friend, Greg Alcorn, who is providing early learning readers to disadvantaged families, lower income people who are not usually ready for kindergarten when they get there. But through his work, we're supplying the entire county that I grew up in with these learning devices that are going to help them. Things like that it was a learning to me. Help others help their causes instead of me trying to do everything myself.
Oh, I love that. I mean, that is phenomenal. And I see some questions starting to pop up there, Billy, in the screen, and I just wanted to remind everybody that Billy will answer your questions if you will submit them in the Ask a Question button, which maybe is about there on the screen. Just click on that text that says Ask a Question. And then the next part of the programming will be Billy's answering those questions. So, Billy, I love the community story. And, actually here in Greenville, we had an interesting thing talking about the polarization. I had a relative in my family actually set up I think it was over 300-foot long table down Main Street in Greenville, where everybody from all walks of life came and had a Thanksgiving lunch.
Right. Mm.
And it was great. Just folks from all walks of life, and initiatives like yours and those, I think, draw us all together. How has this impacted your friends or family, though, Billy? Can you share maybe, I guess, a little more personal aspect of it? You explained what kind of how your businesses have helped people, how you've helped community. Can you touch on friends or family?
Sure. I have found that my family are just as interested, and actually more interested, in joining me in these type causes than they were in business. I mean, we've always been a family that came together to work together in whatever business endeavors I had. But when we've got a cause that is helping other people, they have been more than excited to get involved. So that would be one aspect.
So they weren't quite as excited about selling water or propane as you were?
Not quite.
Well, the transition you have made is just phenomenal. I mean, with the companies that you have started, I'm sure the temptation to just start one right after another, you're clearly good at it. How did you make that transition? Going through that transition, did you learn something about yourself or God's impact on your life? Or maybe there's another aspect. But what did you learn about yourself, kind of completely changing gears like you have?
Yeah. Well, let me give you the most recent story. Here I am about a year into my journey and my halftime journey with a new purpose and a new way of thinking about life. And my company, Primo Water, that I founded, had some unfortunate circumstances and needed me to come back in as CEO for an interim period of time um, while they replaced the prior CEO. And so here I am. I've gotten used to this new way of life when now I'm thrust back into the day-to-day, you know, 13, 14-hour days of conference calls and meetings and investors and public company things. And you know, I looked at it and I said, Lord, and, you know, Doug, I don't think I would have been prepared for this kind of curveball a couple, 3 years ago. But the way that I look at life now is that I'm executing God's plan, and I'm trying to execute His plan. And obviously, His plan had a little crook in it. I don't know if the devil threw something in there, or if He's got a plan for something that will come out of this interim time where I'm serving back as CEO. But I'm really calm about it, that as long as I'm executing God's plan, it's going to work out. It's when I try to create my own plan that the outcomes usually don't work.
So was that an aspect you learned about yourself, that you had to step back from driving this from driving Billy Prim?
Yeah, from driving the bus. You know, I thought for many years that I was in control. I was foolish. I wasn't in control. He's in charge, and I'm here to execute His plan.
Well, Billy, as we draw to the end and start to move into the questions, and again, I would remind people that have questions for you to go ahead and enter those into the Ask a Question field. Billy, how would you summarize the transition you've made in your life from serial entrepreneur to, you've continued your entrepreneurial skills, but you have also broadened maybe their purpose, it sounds like. And can you describe just where you are now, how the difference in your life, how you wake up in the mornings?
Yeah, that's a good place to start. I wake up in the morning, and the first thing I think about is some scripture, and really trying to find the things that I'm grateful for to start that day, and that totally changes the way I view the things that, before I open up Outlook and look at the 22 problems that are there waiting for me. So I think things like that and those type disciplines that together we as a group learned in halftime of sharing each other's best practices really prepare me for this next chapter.
Billy, is there one final comment you would make? I was probably one of those reluctant people to go through the program. I came up with every excuse in the world why I didn't have time for it. And I'm not sure you were that way, but what would you tell me if you and I had met 4 or 5 years ago, before I had gone through the program, and I said, Billy, but I don't have time. It does seem like a good way to spend time, but what would you tell me? What would be your advice?
Yeah. It certainly is the same question all of us asked, and when you think about it, man, I've got to commit to 1 year. It was like, oh, there's no way I have that kind of time. Well, I would tell you, being on the other side is when I said those things, I really didn't understand what's important. We all have some times. It's just how we prioritize that time. And we all have the energy to do a little more. So there's never going to be a good time. There's never going to be just, a dead period of time that you can go do this. So when God calls you to do it, that's when the time is right. And that's what worked for me.
So you think it gave you a better filter on on figuring out your priorities, whether it be time or your money or where you're going to, how you're going to spend your time?
I learned my purpose. That was it. Mm-hmm.
Well, Billy, this was fantastic, and I so appreciate you spending this time with us and sharing your story and taking out time from your really busy life. And I appreciate everybody that's joined us today. I know how busy you are. This is a really busy time of year, and you're taking time with us today to learn a little bit more about what people like Billy have gone through and where they are now. So if you have to leave, we certainly understand that. We're going to, though, transition into the questions. Billy, if you've got time for a few questions, look like there's about 3 right now. And we'll take others if they come in. But do you have time to go through a few questions?
Sure.
Okay.
Love to help.
So while we go through the questions, I'll just remind everybody, type yours in the Ask a Question field. And also, if you need to run, you can ask your question, and actually you'll get a unique email when Billy is answering the question, whether you're live or not, and you can watch his answer. And you don't even have to watch the whole webinar. So I would encourage you to pop those in there. And thank you, Alyssa. She's popped in there how to get in touch with Billy. And we've got an email address there. And if you will contact that will be a great way to get in contact with Billy. So, Billy, we're going to move into the first question, which I will read out to you if that's good for you. So we're going to start with Mike asks, do you or did you have a close personal friend to support you during your halftime mission?
Good question. I would tell you that Lloyd Reeb became really close friends and coach to me. He just held my hand and encouraged me through the entire process. It was Lloyd's inspiration that got me to take the plunge, and he was with me step by step through the way, and that made all the difference. It did. So.
Billy, let me add to that question, though. How about your roundtable group? Did you had other people on the journey with you? Were they helpful?
They were extremely helpful. I know some people that have done this more alone with just a coach, and I really felt that having a group go through it together was so meaningful because you get, number one, you get to help other people. You get to see some of their questions and hurdles that they have to overcome, and by doing that, you learn. We all learn more from teaching than we do from listening. And by helping the group together meant a lot. And along the way, I became really close friends with a lot of outstanding people.
Now, Billy, not everybody on the webinar today is familiar with the group. Can you describe how many people were in yours and how often you met?
Yeah, we met. There were 7 people in our group, and we met monthly for a year. I think we took 1 month off, but some of those were dinner meetings with spouses. But mostly it was a morning meeting that took up most of the morning, 3 to 4 hours. And Lloyd was our coach in those. And The 11 or 12 sessions made a huge impact on all of us.
Yeah, the coaches are fantastic, and I know ours was fantastic. But I will have to say, our group lives on, and we text each other and communicate a lot, and it's just been fantastic to continue the journey with like-minded people.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Billy, we'll move to the next question, and Mike, I appreciate that question. That was a phenomenal one. So the next question we've got, Billy. What does a family meeting look like for you and your family? You described this earlier in our conversation.
Yeah, a family meeting can take a lot of forms, but what I have done is I have hired a facilitator each year to come in. And in my case, I tell people, I said, we all spend thousands of dollars to get Lou Holtz or Mike Ditka to come and talk to our company, but we're too cheap to spend that money on the most important people in our life, which is our family. And so I bring in a speaker each year. It's different in different years, but and together, we put together a program that interests everybody from the young grandkids who may be 5 or 6 years old to my mom who's 83 years old. And we go through exercises. I mentioned, creating our value system and a collage of the things that our family stands for. The kids really get into that, and it has impacted them for years in the future. We've done it usually at a beach house location where we can all get together. We're very private, and we usually take a long weekend. We carve out one day where the facilitator is there. And we do nothing but different activities together, prayer, and really thinking about why we as a family are where we are today and what can we do to improve our relationship with each other, our relationship with God, but also our relationship with others. And so that would be a little bit of what it looks like.
So it sounds like you make this an event not to be missed by your family members.
It's an annual event, and I think we all look forward to
it. And has Lou Holtz made it yet?
Lou has not made the group. I do know Lou, and he would be a good one, but I've had many great facilitators.
Great. Mm-hmm. All right, we have at least one more question, Billy, and this one is, what is your dream or ambition to enrich your community? Is there any specific ideas or projects that you have in mind?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I'm still waiting on. I don't have what I would call an aha moment of, I'm going to provide fresh drinking water for the entire, community in this African village or something. Mine is a little more general, and I'm still looking at that. The things that I see that I am passionate about is number one is I think everybody in our community deserves the same opportunities in life. And I see a lot of children who don't have those opportunities for certain circumstances. And I think that is something that weighs on my heart and something that I want to continue to improve in our early childhood education, but even beyond that, the health and welfare of people who really can't afford to live like some other people live in our community. So how we do that is a much bigger problem, and it is going to require all of us working together to achieve that goal.
But it does sound like you filtered it down to it will involve children and maybe those that are less fortunate.
Mm-hmm. It is.
Okay. Well, again, there's that filter in action, and you know what kind of tugs on your heartstrings.
It is. Mm-hmm.
All right. We have one more question, unless somebody else pops one in. This will be the last one. So, can you talk a little bit more about what is leading a public company from a Christian perspective and how that's practically looked for you?
Yeah. That's a very interesting question, and it is sometimes difficult in the fact that there are let's call them guardrails of where you can go in running a public company, and which is other people's money, and where you go there. And that's one reason I decided it was time for me to step outside the CEO position so I could be more vocal about how I do that. Now, in our public company, we have these programs of lessons in life and leadership that we all share the things that have helped us in life and leadership be successful. And I'm always telling people there's no specific one route for you. This is just what has worked for me. And I think it's not out of bounds to say what works for you. It's not something that you have to do in this company. Now, in all of my private companies, that I can be a lot more passionate about my religious beliefs than I can my public company experience.
But your employees know about the spiritual side of you, it sounds like, whether it's the public company or the private company.
I try to live it every day, and I try to let that speak for itself.
Well, it certainly is clear today. And I want to thank you for taking so much time with us, and especially knowing how busy you are. Billy, as we wrap up, is there 1 or 2 minutes you'd like to take just to either encourage those that are maybe alumni and they have gone through the program, but maybe their progress has slowed, they've run into roadblocks and they've maybe set this aside, or maybe someone who is considering joining a roundtable or going through a halftime program, and as we discussed earlier, just can't quite either find the money or the time? What would you tell them?
Yeah. Well, I think I can only speak from my experiences, and my experiences have been this. I needed some things to help me through a process to get this accomplished about where I'm going in my next chapter. I didn't have the time. I certainly didn't feel like I had the year to put into it or so on. But the process of learning things like what a silent retreat meant, going through the program and understanding how to include my spouse, understanding that I needed to think about my strengths and weaknesses and test some things before I started on a journey that may not turn out the right way. Those kind of processes that I learned really helped me and help me today. And that has worked for me. Big time. And I think it may work for some others. And I would urge you to at least try it.
Well, and you're living it out actually today, as you've had a little bit of a setback in your own plans. But I love your attitude. You just okay. It will be overcome.
Oh, yes, yes. Mhm.
Well, thank you, Billy. Thank you so much. And I think we're going to pop there in the chat how people can get in touch with you. And I just thank you for spending a few minutes with us. And we thank you, Billy, for all your time. And we thank you for everybody in the audience that took all this time and asked such great questions. And if you enjoyed this webinar, we have another one coming up actually on Thursday from the person that was Billy's coach, which is Lloyd Reeb. That is going to be on New Year's resolutions that actually work. That will be Thursday, December 5th, and it will be at 9:30 a.m. rather than 1 a.m. as it was, 1 p.m. as it was today. The webinar was recorded, and a link will be sent to everyone that has registered for the webinar. And you can still register for this webinar even if it's over. So we hope you'll join us and for the next webinars, and then the next one when we talk to another alumni. So Billy, thank you very much. In the audience, we thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you, Doug.
Bye-bye.